Hello, Patriots, and welcome back to the sixth Anon Audio Chat on the Q News Patriot Rumble channel. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SG Anon. It's good to be back with all of you. Actually doing the chat today, the same day that File 52 is releasing. I'm currently editing and cleaning that up. Couldn't have been more aligned on timing. Things couldn't have been at a better start post the event in South Dakota, and then over these last few weeks as I've been recovering and continuing that post-surgical journey, which, by the way, takes a lot longer than they tell you it does. But I think that's more of our spiritual nature sort of slowing us down and keeping us in the slow lane and reminding us that it really is about the journey and smelling the daisies along the trail, if you will. So that being said, we're not going to waste a whole lot of time. I'm bringing back again today Dr. Kirk Elliott, PhD. For those of you who have not seen, Dr. Kirk and I discuss economic issues, the things that are really going on in the financial world and the systems, the things that they tell you are going on in the financial world and the systems that we all live under. It's always arousing and I think cognitively stimulating, we should put it that way, discussion. But I do want to highlight, as we've done a couple of these talks now, and I've fielded many of your emails and answered many of your questions and things of this nature. When I do these audio chats, it is important that I strike a midline between those dead asleep normies who are not going to come around to things like a worldwide military alliance, the restructuring of the financial system in a dual reality fashion, good versus evil going back and forth at play with one another. It's difficult to get that across the threshold, the manifold, if you will, of individuals that are newly awakening. So we strike a midline where we talk about the things that are going on in the world through the eyes of what we have palatable right in front of us and through the eyes of very, hypothetical logic, if we will, and a couple of well-based suppositions to go forward and discuss things. But at the end of the day, it is important that these chats are designed for that group of people. The hardcore awakened patriots don't need chats like these because they've sort of been in this arena for a while. And just as Jesus said, if I'm the great physician, I want to be with those who are sick, not those who are well. It's sort of the same approach we're taking here. So all of that being said, Dr. Kirk, thanks for coming back. I'm excited for our discussion today. Thanks for taking some time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's great to be with you, SG. I mean, wild times that we're living in, right? And when literally everybody that's calling is gripped, paralyzed, consumed with fear. Right. It starts to make people do things that they shouldn't normally do. Right. It either causes you to do nothing, stick your head in the sand like an ostrich waiting for the windstorm to go away, or it causes you to make a wrong decision. Because a lot of the people I've talked to, and this just breaks my heart in a pretty big way, is we're talking on programs like this about how to protect and preserve and grow and thrive in times like this, right? And bring that message of hope. And so many of the people that just listen to podcast after podcast after podcast of different people think the world is ending tomorrow. It's like, no, the world's not ending tomorrow. Our government might, the way that we have known things, is going to go away at some point, but the world is not ending tomorrow. And people make really bad decisions with that kind of immediate fear, right? So as we talk about ways to protect and preserve a portfolio, then times like this, historical, which we're going to go over some of that and why we're at where we are on this program today, but and how we got to this point. But not all gold is gold, not all silver is silver, not all dealers are good dealers to work with, right? So I kind of laid this fleece out there and said, hey, if any of you feel like something wasn't right, you've bought gold or silver in the past from somebody and you think you overpaid for it, because literally with silver being $23-24 an ounce, you shouldn't spend more than $30 an ounce for bullion silver. So I start to get invoices in from major companies that people see all the time on national TV. There's gold and silver ads everywhere, right? Well, I'm looking at some of these things. It's like, the client just 2 weeks ago paid $71.15 an ounce for silver. $71.15. Silver's $23 an ounce. You shouldn't pay more than 30. So that's like almost tripling the spot price of gold. That's insane, right? And gold almost $3,700 an ounce. That was one client. Client number two paid $123 an ounce for silver. client number 3 paid over $80 an ounce for silver. It's like, what in the world? What,
I'm
I
glad you
mean,
brought this up. I'm glad you brought
yeah.
this up because I want to ask you a question about this exact issue. And it ties into the historical context that we were discussing off air about, getting into. How in the world can we have such massive, from your understanding, where you've been with the financial system, the background you have, the exposure to this industry, 30 plus years, I think you said at this point, you
Mhm.
know, how do they do it? How do they get such a massive carte blanche check to do whatever they want to do as it pertains to the price?
So it goes back to, you can go back to the 80s, the 1980s, right? And it's like in the 1990s and going up into like Y2K in 1999, when you had older rare coins, the theory was you invest into something that's old, semi-rare, that hasn't been minted in a while. And as the price of gold goes up, the demand for those things are going to go through the roof, and you get a multiplier on that account, on the value of that, because it's just kind of rare. Well, that hasn't worked since, in my view, since the emergence of cryptocurrency, right? Because why would somebody invest into something where they want a multiplier, in gold or silver, because it's private? And so people want privacy, they want leverage on that, they want a multiplier effect. Well, you get that with cryptocurrency. So what worked in the past, in the 80s and 90s, when you'd have some of those semi-rare and rare coins, doesn't work anymore. It hasn't worked for over 20 years. I've never seen a client actually recover from the excessive premiums that you have on those. So there's two different types of people that want gold or silver. Number one is an investor. Number two is a collector, right? So collectors would be the ones that are paying these excessively high prices for things, but it would be for something that's a collectible, something that's minted in the 1800s, early 1900s, something where there is a finite number of them and they might be in pristine condition, or, there's a grading scale, right? The higher you go on that, the higher the price. And there's collectors out there that love that stuff. But as far as an investment, I've never seen anybody recover from that ever. So don't think that you go into these things that somebody will give you a song and a dance, a good sales pitch of, oh, these are non-confiscatable, these are non-taxable, it's like, the government's the government. If they want to confiscate anything, they will, right? B, you always have to pay your taxes. It's like, don't fall for either one of those traps into thinking I've got something special. It doesn't work that way. And so when I see people that call me and literally, SG, they're crying. And these people have worked so hard their whole life to save up, thinking that they're doing the right thing because they've heard, even like you and me talk, or me talk on other programs, right? It's like, buy gold or silver. Not all gold is created equal. Not all silver is created equal. Not all dealers are created equal, right? And I don't know how some of these people selling that garbage can sleep at night. I really don't, because over the weekend, my CEO was talking to a prospective client who was really distraught because she paid $999 an ounce for a proof silver eagle modern day issue that's been minted in the 1996, I think. It's like, what? It's not even like 20 years old. It's like, this is insanity that somebody would pay $1,000 for something like that, which you're never going to recover from, right? So one of the keys to wealth is to buy low, sell high, maximize the number of ounces that you have to minimize the cost. That's how you should invest into gold or silver. So I'm looking at these portfolios, and a gentleman had called me, and he didn't know what to do because he had heard me talking on a program. And it's like, hey, Kirk, I think I overpaid. And he was one of them that paid $71.15 an ounce for silver. Looked at his portfolio, and literally he would have lost about 70% of the value of that portfolio in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, right? If you were to sell it, and so they say, oh no, in time, just watch this, it's going to grow and thrive. It's like, show me how any time over the last 30 years that's actually happened. It hasn't. I think times have changed to where people looking for leverage and privacy are looking into the crypto space, not into the precious metal space. So the only thing that you should ever look at silver or gold to do is act as an insurance policy against the collapsing currency, minimize your cost, maximize your return. And you know what? I'm getting people that are sending me these, and we're helping them get out of it, unwind some of those positions, which might be a little bit painful because you will take a hit because, yeah, it was a mistake to go into them. But the only way to recover from that is to go into bullion that's going to start to move dollar for dollar with the gold or silver market. Because a lot of these positions, when you pay triple or quadruple or even more the amount of the metal itself, and you hardly get anything over bullion prices for it, that means before you even break even, silver almost has to double or triple, right? It's like, oh man, take your hit now, allocate into something that's going to grow dollar for dollar with the markets. And when I think silver's going to hit $75 to $100 an ounce over the next year to year and a half, you will have recovered that initial mistake and then grow, really. So the only way to do it, though, is to get back into bullion that will move dollar for dollar with the spot price of the market. And then you can be in the right place at the right time and finally sleep well at night. But some of these things, SG, I'm telling you, they disgust me. How people who don't know, I mean, it's not their fault. They don't know. They're just listening to this story and they're eager to protect and preserve, and they view silver or gold as, you know, God's currency kind of a thing, and they're all excited, and then they get sold this garbage. Breaks my heart. It breaks my heart.
Well, it's the unfortunate reality out there is that, you know, these sorts of times create enough uncertainty that those individuals who are out for themselves, and they sort of out themselves as we go along in the process, you know, just because we have free will in the world, right? And that's really what this boils down to, the ability to exercise one's free will, one's free choice. That's sort of the spirit of the Great Awakening overall. I want to come back to the issue of the correct silver and things like that in just a minute. But one of the things I want to discuss are these sorts of things that drive markets. When you talk about moving with the markets, moving dollar for dollar, things like that. And I actually have a question for you as well on this particular topic. So we'll start there, and then I'll move into some of these headlines here. But, you know, when we consider this issue of de-dollarization, and the removal of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, which we believe on this broadcast has already occurred, but we know that, you know, individuals that are in your position as financial advisors, they can't say something like that, but we can say that it's definitely publicly an optic presence. It's very much a reality with the actions being taken by Saudi Arabia, China, India, Russia, these other major world economies, world militaries, industrial powers, things of that nature. So when we look at precious metals, and we look at the idea of the dollar going down, what makes precious metals safe when we consider that the devaluation of the currency as the currency itself is happening? How do we look at, you know, those precious metals holding their value through that period of time, for example?
So it's a really good question. So if you look back you have to go all the way back to like the 1920s, when we actually had a currency that was backed by gold. You know, back then, you look at like a 1 ounce, you know, Liberty or St. Gaudens coin. They were 1 ounce piece of gold, and they had a $20 face value on them. It was equal to a $20 bill, right? So you could go to Sears or Woolworths or to the bank and use either one of them interchangeably. I mean, that was what gold backing was all about. The government had to have discretion in how much money they printed, because you couldn't do it unless you had gold to back it with, right? So then came the Federal Reserve Act. So actually, let's answer one quick question before we go to the next step, which is, what did that buy you? What was the purchasing power of $20 back then, back in the 1920s? Well, a $20 bill or 1 ounce of gold, which is equal to $20, would buy you a finely tailored men's suit, a shirt, a tie, a belt, and shoes. That's what it would get you. So fast forward to today, 102 years later, right? What does $20 get you? Well, you can't really even buy a nice pair of socks for $20, or a date night at Chili's or Applebee's. Can't even get that for $20, right? But 1 ounce of gold at approximately $2,000 still gets you a finely tailored men's suit, a shirt, a tie, a belt, and shoes. See, it's maintained that purchasing power over time. That's the goal of looking at gold or silver as an insurance hedge against a collapsing currency. So it maintains that purchasing power parity over time. And that's just a long-term, longitudinal study, which it does. But yes, that's what it does. So you look at what the dollar has been doing. So it started in the 1940s, right? With you look at the Federal Reserve Act in the early 1900s, that took money creation away from Congress and put it into the hands of the cartel owning bankers of the Federal Reserve. So there's nothing federal about it. There's nothing reserve about it, right? Let's get that straight. They just print money. And under the Federal Reserve Act in the early 1900s, they basically tricked, the people into saying, okay, we're going to print money, but we're going to charge the U.S. government interest for money that we just print out of thin air, right? And so it was like the biggest Ponzi scheme coup of all time, pretty much. So then you fast forward to 1944. 1944, the Bretton Woods Act made the U.S. dollar the world's reserve currency, which means all international settlements are traded in U.S. dollars to basically add stability to the global monetary system. Fast forward again to 1971. Nixon took us off the gold standard completely. See, the Federal Reserve Act made it illegal for basically us then to transact, in gold or silver as individuals, but still countries could actually request payment in gold or dollars. So in 71, France wanted some payment back in gold, and Nixon said, no, he understood. I understand why people think that he caused all the inflation we have, but I understand why he did what he did, because he said, no, France, we're not going to pay you in gold. We want to kind of keep it. We'll pay you in our worthless US dollars. So close the gold window altogether. So at that particular moment in time, we had zero tangible backing to our dollar at all. It was just purely fiat based. Then in 1973, we added a backing to our currency again through the petrodollar. So we went from a gold standard now to a petrodollar standard, where all international oil settlements are traded in US dollars. So what does that mean? That means there was built-in demand for our currency. If all oil was settled in US dollars, we had to print more money than we needed domestically to fund those international settlements of oil transfers. So that's how we got to amass the wealth that we did today as a country, being the world's reserve currency until recently. Recently, when the BRICS nations started rising up, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, right? And now about 30 other countries petitioning in, including Saudi Arabia's in, right? They're looking at Iran. They're looking at Mexico now, and about 20 other or 30 other countries wanting to be part of this BRICS coalition. View that as like the Eurozone countries. It's just countries that come together collectively for political economic gain, right? And that's what the BRICS nations are doing. They're wanting to usurp and replace the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. So here's where it starts to get squirrely. And for us as Americans, because our dollar is what's being replaced, is you can't just come in and say, okay, we're going to kick the US dollar. We're going to be the new reserve currency. You can't be President Xi in China and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to be the world's reserve currency. It doesn't work. So what you have to do is have a really strong military, really strong economy, and political clout globally. That's how you become a reserve currency. Individually, none of those nations really have that. So yeah, China's economy is big, but they're a political nightmare. Russia's pretty good, political nightmare. Saudi Arabia has a ton of oil, but you can't say that they would fulfill all of those until they band together. Now they do. So then one extra problem that they have to do, they've got the backdrop, but you still have the US dollar that's the world's reserve currency. You got to kick them out, right? So now what are they doing? Country after country after country is signing bilateral trade agreements to get out of the US dollar and trade in the other currency other than the US dollar, which takes away our demand. So then you have to erode people's faith and confidence in the banking system to get us as Americans to say, I don't care what you give me, globalist agenda people, we'll take it because we need to feed our families, we need to pay our rent. So when they're coming in with central bank digital currency and their new mechanism and the BRICS nations all rising up, if we didn't have massive economic failure and problems in America, there's no way that we would do that. You also have to have very weak leadership from the White House for this to happen. Imagine the BRICS nations telling America, we're going to take away that world reserve currency status that you guys got. If Trump or Reagan were in power, they would say, no way, you are not on our watch, right? So, but you don't have that kind of strong leadership. In fact, you have the opposite. You've got Biden, who's signing pacts with the World Health Organization to give away our national sovereignty just a few weeks ago. 192 nations signed off on it. We're one of them, that basically say in a world global health emergency, the World Health Organization president basically has more power and jurisdiction over a country than the president of that country, because they can withdraw travel. They can say, you can't travel unless you're fully vaccinated. You can't open a bank account unless you do this and that. I mean, really, it gives them pure ultimate power. We just gave up our national sovereignty. During the debt ceiling talks, Biden decided, hey, it's more important I go to Asia to talk about the G7 meeting in Japan than it is to talk about our debt ceiling problems, right? So because the globalist agenda is stronger than the domestic policies. So you've got that all stuff happening. There is no leadership. So you got the BRICS nations rising up and saying, if now is our time to strike, if we try to take away the world's reserve currency status from the US dollar, we're going to get no opposition right now, which is exactly what they're getting. And I believe, SG, that this is all by design. Because nobody's that stupid. People can be that evil, but they're not that stupid.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you should close off with that, because that's exactly what I was about to highlight. You know, whether we're talking about it from the side of the good guys coming in and helping to orchestrate a controlled demolition, or whether we talk about it from the other side simply going haywire as they realize that now it's a game for keeps. It's not simply just a rigged, secure, closed system anymore. It's been blown open. There's been gears that have been blown off the chain. We're watching, like you said, some of the most egregious, and I say purposeful because it is so egregious, economic, fiscal, business policy emanated from the government pulpit. We're certainly seeing a I shouldn't say trans because it's more than that. It's a multinational, I wouldn't, on this show, we call it a coordinated operation, right? But regardless of what it's coming from, it is an obvious restructuring of the dynamics of financial trade between governments, the dynamics of financial understandings between nation states that has been going on around the world. Just today, actually, I believe it was today. Let me double check because I scrolled down in the article. Okay, so yesterday, an article came right out and said BRICS ministers say rebalancing of the global order underway is happening, and they call the group a symbol of change. And the article opens with the top figureheads of the BRICS alliance say that the coalition represents a complete reconfiguration, their words, not mine, of global order as the old world fades away, their words, not mine. So as we look at the death of what amounts to a corporate banking and slave system, really what we're talking about at this moment in time is whether we, the people, move together as one into a better way of doing things, or whether we end up just simply in the next version of a digital slave system. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's 100% correct. I mean, you're looking at what the SEC is now starting to do and trying to crush major US centralized exchanges like Coinbase and Binance. But I think this could have a silver lining, literally, for people who are thinking ahead. Because if you look at why does the government and the big banksters need to demonize cryptocurrency? Why do they need to demonize cash? Well, because they have centralized digital currency. That's what CBDCs are, which knows everything about everything that you ever purchase, right? It's programmable money. It's tied to your digital social profile, your social credit score, your ESGs if you're a company, right? This is what they want. And if you don't match up with their ideology, they'll cut you off from buying or selling. Well, who's in their right mind, SG? If let's just say you're the PR agent for the government, right? And you're saying, hey, everybody, we got something really cool for you. We're a government-run central bank that's digital, that has the ability to cut you off from buying or selling if we don't like who you are. That's what they're selling. It's like, well, who would want that garbage, right? So, but that's exactly the product that they're selling. So they really can't tell people that. So what are they doing? They're saying, ooh, decentralized cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, like all these other ones, they're bad because look at the greed. Look at everything that's happening. These companies are going out of business. Don't you want something with rules and regulation and oversight and transparency that we could bring to you? And you can't have paper currency running in conjunction with central bank digital currency because it's still private. You can't really tax something that you don't know about if there's under the table transactions, so they're looking at money laundering and things like that and making up reasons why they're even demonizing cash. And I say that, and absolutely true. Try to go into a bank and deposit a couple $1,000s of cash if you have it. They're going to say, where'd you get this? Well, how did this go? Why do you even have it? It's like, well, it's the legal tender of our country. That's why people have it, right? But try to ask for taking it out. They might not have it. I mean, literally, they truly might not have it. We had a bunch of missionaries in town, 13 kids, and literally, I just wanted to give them $10 for lunch one day, right? So went into the bank, wanted a couple $100s in tens, and it was at the end of the day. It's like, we don't know if we have it, Kirk. It's like, what? You don't have $200 in tens? You're a bank. I mean, what? Right? So really, they're operating on very little capital, demonizing you, making you feel like a criminal if you even have cash, because they want to usher in their new system. And so don't take my word for it, right? So let's look at what's happening with the Bank of International Settlements for the last couple of weeks. So the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF, they're like the banks of banks, right? So they're ushering in a new global central bank digital currency system called the UMU, or the Unicoin, right? So this is where all like what we're talking about, the Fed Now app for the Federal Reserve, the BRICS nations getting their central bank digital currency, they're all going to come underneath this umbrella of the Bank of International Settlements, Unicoin. It's like the central bank of all central banks, right? With their digital currency. Well, if the single umbrella network allows for quick cross-border transactions, this is their carrot that they're dangling out there. It's like, we're going to make finance fast, and we're going to make it transparent. We're going to make it easy, right? But what did I just explain? I explained a cashless society is what I explained. So one concept that they're working on right now is Project Icebreaker. So Project Icebreaker deals specifically with creating SWIFT-like bottleneck systems. So SWIFT is the messaging board that all banks have to use to talk back and forth if you're doing a wire. So the SWIFT system would tell Bank A, hey, you have to send a wire to Bank B, and that same system would tell Bank B that they're receiving a wire from Bank A. Without that, there's no international or domestic bank wires. So what they want to do is regulate this SWIFT-like system and homogenize or bring into one all currencies into a single one world exchange model that gives them the power to cut out any nation or company that does not meet their ideological approval, in their words, right? So program number 2, go to the Bank of International Settlements. Anybody watching this, type in Project Aurora, and it'll come up. There's a video on it. They're bragging about it. It's like World Economic Forum written all over it. Well, Aurora is designed to use machine learning or artificial intelligence as a tool to monitor vast flows of financial transactions. My code word for that is every single transaction at every single bank from every single person in every single country, and they want that in real time. Why would they want it in real time? Oh, here's their carrot: to protect people from the money mules, laundering structures, and money laundering, right? So if they know everything in real time, they can protect you from money laundering. No, if they monitor everything in real time, it coordinates with Project Icebreaker, which says, hey, you don't have the ideological approval for what you're spending, which goes to central bank digital currency, which the World Economic Forum says you can't even buy or sell if your digital social profile and who you are and these ESGs and social credit scores don't add up. See, all of this put together takes away all of our freedoms and controls people at the core. Because if you want to control somebody, SG, you control what you spend and how you spend it and when you spend it. And if you can control that, you can control a person. See, but they still have one little problem, or a big problem, and that is people still have money in their bank accounts that they still trust. So if you erode their trust in the banking system. Well, now they will give away at pretty much any freedom they have left to get people to fix the system. So Weiss Research, I love Weiss Research. They've been doing bank ratings and credit union ratings for 70 years. They're like the best of the best. So far to date, we've had 5 banks that have failed. Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, Credit Suisse overseas, because UBS had to buy them out. And then you had First Republic, and, you've had these banks that have failed, about 5 of them. Well, what did Weiss just come up with? Their list of banks on the verge of failure, not decline, but failure, 4,243 banks. It's like, oh my word. Look what happened when 5 banks failed, let alone the potential for 4,243. See, they're ushering in a system that's so bad, which is why I say they're not stupid, they're evil. Nobody can be this dumb to actually create this system that's imploding so rapidly. It's just, they just have a different agenda. They have a different goal, and that's to eliminate money as we know it, banking as we know it, to usher in a new system. And you know what? They're not even hiding. They're not even hiding in the shadows, using code words. They're bragging about it. Hey, go to our website. Look at Project Icebreaker. Look at Project Aurora. Listen to Dr. Pilpa Malmgren at the World Economic Forum brag about programmable money and how they have the ability to cut you off from buying or selling. They're not hiding. They're telling us what they're going to do. They're telegraphing it, and they're bragging about it.
It's really, I love our conversations because we end these notes on such synchronicity, and you're a really good counterbalance. It's almost like you are the appropriate cynicism to the optimism of this show, right? But it's worth highlighting that that's necessary. It's a necessary part of this message to help it reach far and wide, because we are at the end of the day in a consciousness-based war. This is a psychological operation. We're witnessing it in real time. And like you said, these people they've never been this stupid. They've been able to hide in plain sight for literally thousands of years. They have instituted several different financial systems of total slavery and punishment, in different very advanced civilizations throughout world history. This is an experienced, very strategic, very old worldwide mafia. And the fact that they are so colossally on exposure at this point, that's actually one of the reasons we say on this show that, what if there's more at play, right? What if there's actually another angle on this, even though we can't go out and claim that. And I would never expect the professionals I have on the show to claim that either. It's just not feasible. But it is really interesting to look at the overtness, the obviousness of what we have going on. We have articles popping up today. This was another financial article that came out. Overwhelming majority of Americans oppose the US CBDC that would allow government to track and control spending. That was an article that just dropped today. And all it says is it's very interesting, but it comes from the Cato Institute. This is an article that a study that originated in the Cato Institute to check the country's sentiment on the potential pros and cons of CBDC. And the study found that a solid 74% of respondents would outright oppose the issuance of a central bank digital currency if it gave the government control over how people spend their money. That is not a political divide number. And the fact that this comes from the Cato Institute makes me think that the number itself was probably higher, and they fudged the results so it didn't look quite as bad. It is an overwhelming majority of we the people that hold the power on whether or not this economic system that's being rolled out, which, by the way, I think it's worth noting that as you were talking about real-time transactions, that would have to be blockchain based, right? That would have to be on highly advanced, light-based technological application, which is really what the essence of quantum interchange is. You see some theories get circulated about crypto and things like that, and I can't get into it, but we know that things like DLT, I think, is the secure coding or the blockchain end-to-end encryption. This would have to be a well built out infrastructure, right, worldwide, for us to have the ability to interchange things at that sort of instantaneous, minute to minute level, and also to allow what we would really class our enemy, the enemy of mankind at the very top here, to do the exact same thing, right, to wire into our lives in a moment to moment, minute by minute level. So, we talk a little bit about precious metals and things, whenever you come on and things like that. We've gotten into that a little bit today, but overall, as we look at building out the future, what from a stance of maybe how we think about money, what would you advise?
Mhm.
If you had the auditorium room for 10 million people and you were going to affect, the next graduating class of some, national organization or whatever, about how they think about the concept of money, value exchange, standard of measure, um, deviations from the norm, things where that there's manipulation at play. How would you encourage people to think about money as we move through this process? Because we know that they're going to attempt the CBDC. That's going to happen. I've
Right.
said on this program that, and this is, this is coming from the optimism that the program, shares and is really sort of based in. I've said that is, more or less the build out. We're letting them build out a structure that we, the people, will eventually take control over, this digital infrastructure, this financial way of life, but at the end of the day, these are the individuals controlling the building capability within our societies. And I think that's an interesting point to debate for another time, but certainly they have the power right now optically, and they're building out these things and creating these issues. So I know that's a really long question, right?
Yeah.
I know it's a really long premise, but as we look at thinking about money, going through this process and what we want on the other side, because we, the people, eventually win, what are your thoughts there?
So I've got quite a few. Some of them could actually be a show all in one, right? One topic. But really we're at a paradigm shifting moment. Like the pendulum has shifted, and right now, it's like a US economic fairy tale. You have to pick one pill, right? You either have to save the system or you save the currency. You can't do both at the same time. So I would say that they're probably going to try to save the system with the emergence of a cryptocurrency, right? Get rid of the system as you know it, but still have a system, right? The notion of central banking as we know it with fiat-based money creation that's paper is going the way of the dodo bird, because they would rather have fiat-based money creation that's digital because there's tracking behind it. It's all about control, right? So I don't think that they're going to try to save the currency. Think the US dollar is probably toast, right? Because this global agenda is moving so rapidly. So now this is going to bring opportunity, right? This is everything that you've talked about on your show for a long time. When you see governments doing evil, well, we can thrive during those moments. We can take advantage of them. So if I were to talk to a graduating class today, it's like, don't what's coming next, we haven't had before, right? In the sense of probably gold-backed digital currency, right? It's like we've had gold-backed currency before. We now have digital currency, but we're moving into an era where the things of the past, people want transparency, they want accountability, they want truth, they want something that's real. And just because, as I look through scriptures, I'm going to, one of my PhDs is theology, and I'm going to bring that in a little bit here on this, but people are so concerned about, Kirk, everything you're talking about, the ability to buy or sell, cut you off if they don't like you. That's mark of the beast in Revelation 13:17. It's like, yeah, does sound like that. And it probably is, right? So how do you navigate through that? Because people are gripped with fear. It's like, oh my word, it's the beast system when we're, the end of the world is coming. It's like, wait a second. Nowhere does it say that is the only game in town. It just says, don't take the mark of the beast, right? So from what I understand biblically, God is a God of choice, right? He gives us the choice to accept Jesus or not. He gives us a choice to sin or not. He gives us the choice to make decisions, follow him and be blessed, make bad choices and not be blessed, right? The consequences. So nowhere did God ever create robots where he says, okay, you only have one choice. There is no choice. You're going to do whatever I say. No, that's not him. So even in this sense, I think central bank digital currency that's coming, they're going to make it really difficult for you to not accept it, right? Maybe social security payments, maybe government benefits, maybe all kinds of things. Maybe all your banks that you know of are going to start moving into that direction. And it's going to make it difficult. But you know what, SG? The good things in life are never easy, right? It's always a sacrifice. There's always a price that needs to be paid. So I think this is where the choice comes in. And I do believe, that we will have something like a gold-backed dollar, silver for barter, a quantum financial system running parallel to to this system that then we can thrive from. And so as we hear central banks around the world telling us, oh, gold, ancient relic, gold is bad, don't buy it. It's so, and that ideology and philosophy has gone deep into the hearts and minds of most paper advisors at Goldman Sachs, Merrill Lynch, all of it. It's like, no, don't buy physical gold and silver, buy stocks, bonds, mutual funds, because they're better. It's like, well, no, they're not. Companies can go out of business overnight. Things that are tangible, things that are real, never do. They never have, never will, right? When was the last time you went to the grocery store and a dozen eggs was free? It doesn't happen, right? In fact, they've gone from $1.99 to $7 because of their stupid policies of inflationary pressures, right? So cars aren't ever free. Oil and gas at the pumps are never free. A tangible asset always has value. So central banks around the world are poo-pooing gold and silver. It's like, no, we've got a great system, central bank digital currency, we're going to fix it. But yet, if you look, central banks around the world, mostly BRICS nations, right? This is interesting. What are they doing? They're gobbling up gold, not by the ounce or by the pound or by the ton, but by the thousands of tons. So you look at the highest, Russia has bought over 1,650 metric tons of gold in the last 20 years. China, almost 1,000 metric tons. Tokyo, 425 metric tons. Kazakhstan, 281. India, Uzbekistan, 228. Iran. Nowhere on this, even on this list, is the United States. Nowhere on this list is the United Kingdom. Nowhere on this list is Germany, right? So you've got World Economic Forum countries and the Western economies basically saying, we're going our way. We're going central bank digital currency. We're doubling down. We're going to be the rulers of the world. And then the BRICS nations are saying, no, don't do what we say, but watch what we do. And they're backing their currency with thousands of tons of gold, right? So here's where they can say and do whatever they want to try to manipulate the markets and try to be naysayers to keep the price down. Well, what are they doing? They're buying it by the thousands of tons, not ounces. So you look at that, it's like there is something at play. There is a new regime that's going to happen. And I think the BRICS nations are rising up so much. They're valuing gold as something that's real, something that's tangible, something that people will want, something that will back their currency, or else why in the world would they even buy it, right? So this is where you start to look under the covers, say, what are they doing? Not what are they saying, but what are they doing? And that's where we're looking at since the year 2010. These countries are amassing tons of gold. And this started when? It started right after the collapse in 2009, when money creation started to go through the roof, cheap money, artificially keep interest rates low, print money like there's no tomorrow with quantitative easing, while the BRICS nations and a lot of these countries on the Central Asian corridor were doing what? They were buying gold. And that's a very interesting dichotomy to me.
That is absolutely fascinating. And it sort of highlights a return to the old ways, which I was kind of hoping you'd go there, and you ended up going there in an indirect fashion. But it's worth highlighting that moving into this new system, I think you used the term valuing it as something that is real, right? Returning to really, this is a breaking of brainwashing and programming from many decades over time, right? There are physical assets that the earth provides, right? Not just in the form of precious metals, although that's the one that people talk about the most, but things like gemstones that are not being unethically sourced and mined, or things like different geodes that are useful for different things, or crystalline structures that are electrically conductive and improve a whole host of things, and have been shown to have that intrinsic value, right? So what you were talking about is things that are right in front of us, to see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, touch it, things that are around hold intrinsic value simply because they are, which implies that there are certain absolutions in the spiritual walk that we all have. There is a moral right and wrong. We sort of know it spiritually when we see it. Children are highly sensitized to it. It's one of the reasons that they're so obnoxious, right?
Right.
Because they highlight the things that we know really aren't great for us, but that we do anyway to compromise. And we're all adults and we get into our vices and things like that. And they call us out because they are arbiters of very, I shouldn't say arbiters, that's not the right word, but they're orators. That's the word I was looking for. Orators of very poignant, appropriate truth that is not overly complex because it is very present right in front of them as a truth in the spiritual walk that they also are having, right? And so as we move from this world of fiat where literally everything is rigged, and everything is dishonest and not transparent, it's all opaque and vague. Just today, Wall Street Apes put out a post on TruthSocial highlighting algorithmic barcoding as a form of trading manipulation. And over time, when you compress the candles of different stocks or bonds or whatever's being traded, you can actually see a barcoded computer algorithm within these candles, and it's representative of the algorithm on the other side because it's a garbage in, garbage out system.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, the algorithm on the other side generates this smoking gun that highlights that there is in fact an algorithm at play. That is a disrespectful method of viewing value exchange. Value exchange is a sacred process between people. It's truly a sharing of I am to I am. I'm giving you something and I'm a living soul, and you're going to give me something and I'm a living, or you're a living soul, and it's going to be something that both of us mutually benefit from. That's an escalative experience, if I can use the term, an escalatory experience walking through life, and it's made possible by fair and just value exchange. And so moving into this new world, I tell people all the time on this program that it really does amount to a war of spiritual choices, and sort of a spiritual war overall. We're being asked to return to certain absolutions in human history and in the history of mankind that were put here for our goodness because they are inherently good things, and we have simply allowed ourselves to be intellectually talked out, brainwashed out, cajoled out, guilted out of, when we know that there's real truth behind it. It's just a matter of having the appropriate perspective. Closing thoughts, my friend.
It is a matter of perspective, right? And as you look at even the fake mainstream media news, people respond to those little 30-second sound bites as if they're the gospel, but that's just what they want you to hear, right? So, you hear stories of oh, well, buy this Google share today because the earnings are going to come out. Well, boom, people respond to that, but it's meaningless. Perception is reality. So what I would encourage everybody to do is do it like you're doing, SG, and you're bringing research to the table. You're bringing decades or centuries of history to the table and how things work. And those are universal truths that don't really change, right? Good money drives out bad, right? And it just does. And we may think that we've lost. Most of America thinks that we've lost. We can't win this game. And then they kind of give up. No, don't ever give up. We haven't lost, right? Because as things get really bad, people will then come to realize we've got some work to do, but there is good things coming. I mean, even today, as we record this, I saw new mortgage applications at the lowest level since 1990. I had a meeting with our banker who loves us. I mean, we do a ton of business. We're a massive company, right? But I said, so how are you doing with real estate, right? And just vetting my bank and continuing to know that they're in a good spot. They stopped doing home equity lines of credit, as did most banks around the country, because they're afraid the loan to value ratio isn't going to be there as real estate continues to collapse. They think it's going to continue to collapse because under Biden's amazing economic plan for America, right, where wages are going down, prices are going up, inflation, with that inflation persisting, rising rates to slow down that inflation, and now countries leaving the petrodollar. They're not seeing a good outcome. They might not use it in those exact words, but yet they know that the result is the same. Same thing you and I have been talking about for a while. And construction loans are very hard to come by. The banks are strapped for capital. They're not giving out money for new loans. So this tells me real estate's about to hit the skids. People are going to lose wages, which means stocks and bonds and mutual funds are about to hit the skids. But yet, like you started the show, where's all this money, hundreds of billions of dollars coming from to keep the markets propped up? It's coming from the Fed. It's coming from off books printing, I'm sure, because we're seeing M2 money supply decrease, but that's not the total money supply. That's what they would want you to believe. M2 money supply is checking, savings accounts, money markets, liquid currency. There's another measure of money, which is global money. That's like euro dollars. Those are the dollars that are used internationally that never actually make the light of day. They're used to buy treasuries back and forth with each other. That number is going through the roof. They're printing trillions and trillions of dollars. You've got a stupid Congress that fell asleep at the wheel, faking negotiations about the debt ceiling talks. McCarthy didn't negotiate. He forgot the root word of negotiations, which is to negotiate, right? He didn't. Biden said, we're never going to raise, we're not going to negotiate. And McCarthy says, we're not raising the debt ceiling. We're not going to mortgage America's future. When Biden came back from the G7 meetings in Japan, what did those two do? They said, we came up with a deal. I originally thought it was going to be a $4 trillion raise to the debt ceiling, which has been awful. Went from 1776 until now, we amassed $31 trillion worth of debt. 4 trillion in one morning would have been bad, but it was worse than that, SG. It was worse than that because they also forgot the second word in debt ceiling, which is ceiling. They removed it. Unlimited spending until the election. That only benefits the party in power when they can spend as much money as they want to try to garner more votes. And then you have a lame duck Congress after that decide the future of America's finances, right, with the debt ceiling talks. All of this is backwards and makes zero sense, which is why I keep going back to these are not stupid people, they're evil people. When you keep hurting the American family by saying, we're not going to put a debt ceiling cap on, we're just going to remove the word ceiling. You can print as much money as you want between now and the election. This is the world that we're living in. So therefore, how do you bring hope to this situation in this dark world? You allocate into physical assets like gold and silver that go up during inflationary times. It's booming. It's safe. You can use it for barter if need be in a world where everything falls apart, right? And people, merchants don't even want currency anymore. So it connects all the dots of safety. That's our goal. Primary goal, protect and preserve from stupid government policies that neither you nor I can control. But we also have this double bonus right now, which is usually if you want safety, you have to settle for a low return. And if you want a high return, you have to settle for high risk. We've got low risk and high return with precious metals right now. And that's something that all of us should take advantage of. And I think this is just one of God's mechanisms for his God-fearing patriot people to actually thrive in these markets that we're living in. When the government officials and the globalists don't want us to thrive, they want us to starve us out, so we'll accept their system, and we don't have to accept that.
Well, and thriving is what it's all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, we are called to rejoice and be glad. We're called to dance. We're called to sing. This is supposed to be a fun life. As we close off the program today, I think it's worth highlighting to everyone out there that following that internal call, following that connection, which is supposed to be fun, it is supposed to be momentous. There is supposed to be inspiration that comes along with it. Getting to hear from your own personal connection to God, your own soul voice, if you will, the conduit, the channel that, feeds you and sustains you in your life. One of the things that is really important is following that no matter what. At the end of the day, whether we come from, a financial background or a business background or, a blue collar background or a small business background or a corporate background or this, being the son of a wealthy professional or things of that nature, it doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, we don't get to take any of that with us. And so as we look at this process and as we go through this process together, we're learning about those important things, right? We're learning about value. We're learning about morality. We're learning about ethic. We're learning about justice. We're learning about fairness. We're learning about taking a broader perspective, right? The events that are happening right now in the Western world, in the NATO nations, the Bretton Woods system, really at the end of the day, which is just an optical extension of the Rothschild system. And it's worth everybody look that up and go and look up the name Meyer Amschel Rothschild. Um, as we look at what happens in this system and as we live it predominantly, many of you out there that follow programs like this and others, as we live through that process, it's worth remembering that if you are a Libyan, or if you are a Jordanian, or if you are an Iraqi, or if you are a Panamanian, you may be looking at what's happening with the United States and sort of appreciating that there is an amount of restoration of balance that's happening there in the world, as it has been the United States government, actually, not its peoples, but certainly the United States government that has been weaponized against the rest of the world with very big teeth. The United States military being a predominant force in the world for really the last 80 years at this point, and really you could say going further back than that, post World War I, and with Woodrow Wilson and the things that he set up with that conflict. So as we go through this process, we're all getting that lesson together, right? We're understanding what it is to exchange value fairly, and we're understanding what it is to have a fair idea of trust and trade with one another at a level that all of us, we the people around the world, can really get along to. And that's what's so cool about this in some respects. It is scary. It is a tumultuous time. There is a tempest outside, right? And so we bring on, I try to bring on anyway, professional voices and voices of we the people from, my different connections and things on these audio chats, because it is so important to have a little bit of education, a little bit of what you could call trusted guidance, some expansion of knowledge, the opportunity to learn, and also hear from one another out there about different things going on, this overarching push of goodness that seems to unite patriots everywhere across all political divides. And we're starting to see that roll out now with the things with the two-tiered system of justice, which we'll talk a little bit about, excuse me, or we did talk a little bit about on audio file 52. That'll be dropping pretty soon. So Dr. Kirk, man, I want to say thanks a whole lot. Where can people find you? And what is a reasonable expectation if they choose to call you and go through different processes, inquiries, some basic FAQs that you could sign us off with?
Well, yeah. So first thing you can do is just simply give us a call, 720-605-3900. Just say SG sent you, right? Or we have a basically website, the landing page that we put together for you, where you can actually request a free consultation, which is just kirkelliottphd.com/SG. Right. And then the process would be, say you've heard what SG and I have talked about today, and you're concerned about it. We want to help you navigate through this, right? So we'll ask you some questions. What IRAs do you have? What accounts do you have that you want to protect? How can we get you out of harm's way into some tangible assets, right? So we hear and listen to your fears, your goals, your aspirations, your concerns, whether you want income or growth. What are you looking for, right? So we'll get to the bottom of it, and then we'll guide you through it. We'll hold your hand through the economy. We'll get you allocated into strength out of weakness. And then as time goes on, we'll hold your hand. We'll always let you know when it's time to buy, sell, reallocate, get out of Dodge, do whatever needs to be done. That's our goal, is to get you to that point of peace. So when you put your head down on the pillow at night, you're thinking, man, I've done everything I can do to protect and preserve. This is great, right? That's our goal, is to get you to that point, and we'll help you do it. It's just a quick phone call, fill out that online form, and we'll get back with you.
Thank you very much, my friend. And ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed today, our 6th audio chat on the Q News Patriot Rumble channel. This is SG Anon, and we will be back with each of you again soon. Remember to thrive during a time where they are attempting to make you all that much more miserable is equivalent to sort of smugly spitting in their face in a polite fashion. So go out and thrive, whatever you choose to do. Enjoy the sunshine today. Enjoy your families. Enjoy your sleepers. Enjoy your kids. Those are the priceless assets that all of us get to have. Have a great afternoon, everyone. This is SG Anon. Thanks. Bye-bye.